From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the evening news brief on Telesur English. We begin this new edition right now. "11 days after the elections, in the midst of protests, police revolt, and serious criticism from international observers, Hondurans still don't know who their new president will be. The Supreme Electoral Court has refrained from declaring a winner, even after it announced final results that gave Juan Orlando Hernández a narrow margin of victory. The opposition alliance is calling for a complete recount of the ballots, saying the whole electoral system is contaminated.
The personnel is tainted, the system is tainted, the process is tainted, the elections are tainted, and they carried out an election covered in fraud. And that is why today, with Salvador Nasrallah and the whole opposition alliance, we are asking that there be a review of the whole process.
Even though our people know this election was manipulated like never before in history, because President Hernandez really thought that by buying votes, having dead people vote, and sending IDs for people living in the United States who know they cannot come back, that he would win at the ballot box, but he lost at the ballot box.
For his part, President Hernandez seemed to accept the call for a recount, saying he was confident of his victory.
We're open to checking and reviewing the ballots once, twice, or 3 times, however many times are needed. We don't have a problem with that because our party has documented the whole electoral process according to what the law allows.
The Honduran police units that refused to obey orders and withdrew to their barracks on Monday have decided to go back to work. After talks with the Minister of Security on Tuesday, the police said they would resume their duties, but they would not repress any protest. A spokesman said that if there were demonstrations, the police would accompany them and provide them with security. Our job is to protect lives, he said. Although President Hernandez said he was open to a review of the results, there is still a significant difference between what the opposition is demanding, a full recount of the ballots from all 18,000 polling stations, and what the Supreme Electoral Court is offering. Our correspondent Heather Gies explains.
I think it's important to note that the opposition alliance is calling for a vote-by-vote recount of the election. That means opening up the ballot boxes and reviewing each one of the ballots. What the Supreme Electoral Tribunal had offered and what it seems that the National Party is agreeing to is a review of the tally sheets, the vote tallies that tabulate the votes, the ballots that are actually within the ballot boxes. And that would be a comparison between the tally sheets that the Supreme Electoral Tribunal is using with the scanned copies of the tally sheets in possession of each of the parties.
And now we move to the U.S., where President Donald Trump has announced the United States' official recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, overturning decades of U.S. policy and destabilizing peace efforts in the region. Trump made the announcement despite warnings from world leaders, including Saudi Arabia and Jordan, that the move would be dangerous for the region and the world. Trump also said he would kick off the process by beginning the move of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Jerusalem is today and must remain a place where Jews pray at the Western Wall, where Christians walk the stations of the cross, and where Muslims worship at Al-Aqsa Mosque. However, through all of these years, presidents representing the United States have declined to officially recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. That is why, consistent with the Jerusalem Embassy Act, I am also directing the State Department to begin preparation to move the American Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And finally, I ask the leaders of the region, political and religious, Israeli and Palestinian, Jewish and Christian and Muslim, to join us in the noble quest for lasting peace. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Israel. God bless the Palestinians, and God bless the United States. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We spoke to our Washington correspondent, Jorge Gestoso, and asked him why President Trump had made this decision.
It's believed that he's trying to satisfy with this decision the donors of his campaign. Also, what he is trying to do is to satisfy the evangelists that are backing the Vice President Mike Pence, and also the pro-Israeli hardliners. That also has a lot to do with the politics in the U.S. What is going on, according to the first interpretation, is that it's absolutely putting an end to the idea of the two states solution. What we can know that is happening is that his decision goes against the advices of his national security team, and mostly also with the people in the State Department.
The Palestinian president Mahmoud Abbas said in a televised speech that the United States can no longer play the role of peace broker in the region.
These denounced and rejected measures create deliberate constraints to all the efforts toward realizing peace and reflect the United States' withdrawal from practicing its role as a peace mediator. In addition, these measures are considered a reward to Israel for denying the accords and challenging the international law, and it encourages the occupation policy, settlements, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing.
Palestinians have called for 3 days of rage over the announcement beginning on Thursday. Hundreds of people gathered to protest in Gaza directly following the announcement, including leaders of the Islamist movement Hamas, who have called on Arab nations to cut relations with the United States. Protests simultaneously took place outside the U.S. Embassy in Ankara and the U.S. Consulate in Istanbul, in what the UN has called a moment of great anxiety.
We call on all Arab governments to cut economic and political ties with the U.S. administration. We also call for the blockade of American embassies on the Arab Islamic international stage and the expulsion of American and Zionist ambassadors from the Arab and Islamic lands, because this decision represents aggression against you.
Our correspondent Noor Harasin sent this report from Gaza.
Palestinians are angry and enraged after the news that the U.S. President Donald Trump decided to move the American embassy to Jerusalem, which means that he will recognize Jerusalem, east and west of Jerusalem, as the capital of Israel. Palestinian factions have called Palestinians to head to the streets and organize sit-in protest against this decision. Also, Palestinian youth groups on social media like Twitter and Facebook have asked people to head to the border between Gaza and Israel and to clash with the Israeli soldiers against this decision that will threaten the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians. Meanwhile, Palestinians do take this news from a positive way. They do think that many countries, Arab and Islamic countries, countries in Asia, Europe, and also South America will stand by the Palestinian people against the decision of the U.S. president.
That was Noor Harasin from Gaza. In Latin America, the governments of Bolivia, Cuba, and Venezuela have all criticized Trump's recognition of Jerusalem. The Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza tweeted, "The Bolivarian government expresses its firm condemnation to the U.S. decision to recognize the illegally occupied city of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Venezuela reiterates its respect for UN resolutions and its solidarity with the Palestinian people." The Cuban Foreign Ministry also issued a communique. It issued, "The U.S. government attempt to change the status of Jerusalem is an attack on the legitimate interest of the Palestinian people and of the Arab and Islamic nations, which will have serious consequences for stability and security in the Middle East." More news in a minute. Stay with us. Venezuela is preparing for municipal elections coming up on Sunday. While some opposition parties decided to boycott the process by not participating, some others are taking part. Our correspondent Frederick Gillingham is in Caracas at a rally in support of the opposition candidate Enrique Mendoza, who will be running for mayor in the municipality of Petare. Here is the report.
So you're probably wondering what we're doing at an opposition rally today here in Petare, of all places. Well, we were here to follow Enrique Mendoza, who is running for mayor in the Sucre municipality. Why is this important? Well, Mendoza is one of the opposition candidates who isn't boycotting this municipal election on December 10th. In running, he essentially legitimizes this vote, whilst three of the main opposition parties, Democratic Action, Popular Will and Justice First, have boycotted. This, obviously, boycotting the vote on December 10th is a very dangerous game. It obviously encourages abstention, and as we remember in October with the regional state elections, abstention of voters was one of the reasons why they suffered such a major loss. From here in Petare, I'm Freddie Gillingham in Caracas, Venezuela.
Thank you, Frederick, for that report. Migration officials in the Dominican Republic have arrested 555 undocumented Haitians who now await deportation. Local media in Haiti say the arrests were not part of a random check, but a targeted raid for undocumented citizens. The General Directorate of Migration said they use government intelligence to locate and capture Haitians, and that these practices will continue. The Dominican government has sent additional soldiers to the border with Haiti to stop Haitians from entering the country. The former Brazilian president arrived in Rio de Janeiro on the latest leg of his electoral caravan. This caravan is intended to counter the political media and persecution that Lula says he's facing. More details in the next report.
Lula da Silva was sentenced to more than 9 years of prison after he allegedly received bribes paid via real estate. But for a broad group of legislators, there's not enough evidence to blame him. And the Brazilian people stand by this fact. He is currently leading all electoral polls because of this popular support.
If they found some proof on him, he wouldn't be here today. He would be in some prison, but they haven't been able to prove anything. They keep trying to, but haven't found anything yet.
The beginning or end of Lula da Silva's 3 caravans were accompanied by news of legal processes against the former president. According to his followers, it's a way to divert the attention of the caravans and to damage the image of Lula.
They want to take Lula out very quickly. Nevertheless, there's people who are waiting for years for their judicial processes.
Regardless of this, Lula is leading all of the polls for the potential next president.
The other party wants to win, and he's not involved with anything. They want to go over him. But I believe that with the help of God, he will win the next election.
This year, more than 100 legislators from Brazil released a book thesis that denounced the biased actions of the Brazilian judiciary. To them, the persecution is political, judicial, and also from the media.
There is an agreement between the media, the judiciary represented by Judge Sergio Moro, and the Ministry of Supreme Electoral Court with Gilmar Mendez, and from the public ministry Lava Jato, who's leading the investigation. That's why we understand the existence of a persecution and a breakage of all constitutional principles that we stand for in Brazil.
Lula is greeted by thousands as he passed by, people that besides denouncing a judicial persecution against him, they reinforce their trust of the leftist leader and they keep hope alive for better days.
Also in Brazil, thousands protested in Sao Paulo against the proposed pension reforms by Michel Temer's government. The CUT Trade Union Confederation says it will call for a national strike if the plan goes ahead. Protests have taken place in several cities against the drastic cuts in pensions, salaries, and social security. The leader of the CUT, Wagner Freitas, says that if by December 13th the government takes the proposal to a vote in Congress, Brazil will be paralyzed. And Argentinian workers have also taken to the streets of Buenos Aires to express their rejection of labor reforms that Mauricio Macri's government is pushing for. Our correspondent Edgardo Esteban has more.
Public servants, social movements, and left-wing parties walked to the historic Plaza de Mayo to protest against the labor reforms proposed by the government of Mauricio Macri, a reform that could affect those in need, especially workers and retired employees, but benefiting the most powerful in the country, as well as the municipalities that support Macri's administration. Congress decided to hold the voting session that was set to happen in the coming days and could be pushed for next year, especially after a number of social protests happening around this new law changed the mind on several members of Congress. In the meantime, workers will continue to express their rejection towards the labor reform and neoliberal measures the government of Mauricio Macri is hoping to achieve.
Edgardo Esteban from Argentina. Still in Argentina, where new information about the missing submarine has created controversy between Mauricio's government and the Navy. According to Navy spokesman Enrique Balbi, the submarine commander, Captain Martín Fernández, made 8 satellite calls reporting an electrical fault, smoke, and fire. The government criticized Navy officials, saying that this information was not immediately communicated to the Ministry of Defense until the disappearance of the submarine. With the support of social organizations, the victims of the 52-year conflict in Colombia protested outside Congress to demand the approval of the special jurisdictions for peace. The victims also defended the peace process, as political reforms will allow regions that were hit by the conflict to have 16 members in Congress.
They're insisting that the 16 seats in Congress are only for FARC members. We, as the victims of this conflict, made very clear proposals on how we should be included in the peace process and to have access to those 16 Congress seats. But we see that authorities didn't listen. They didn't take into account most of the proposals we made. We
cannot forget the 8 million victims that this conflict left. We signed a peace agreement for the victims to improve their situation and to repair what was done to them. We cannot deny them the opportunity to be part of Congress. All Colombians have to support the special jurisdictions for peace so that the victims can be represented.
And also in Colombia, 6 people have been killed from an explosion at an underground coal mine in the Boyacá department, northeast of Bogotá. Colombia's National Mining Agency said the deadly explosion was most likely caused by a concentration of methane gas in the mine that generated an explosion. 3 additional miners are still missing as rescue crews rush to find any possible survivors. In Ecuador, the president of the País Alliance movement and former president Rafael Correa claimed that a soft coup is taking place in the country after President Lenín Moreno pushed for a referendum that Correa described as unconstitutional.
This government hasn't respected the rule of law, as the referendum is leading the country to a soft coup. The referendum wasn't approved by the Constitutional Court, as the law stipulates. That's why the government decided to call for a referendum without respecting the process. That's going against the Constitution.
The First Lady of Peru, Nancy Lange, has been called before the Justice Department for alleged links with Brazilian company Odebrecht, as the Car Wash Commission continues its corruption investigation. Lange has been summoned to assess her involvement with a company called First Capital, which provided financial consulting to Odebrecht in 2006, when her husband, now President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, was the Prime Minister in former President Alejandro Toledo's government. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Electoral campaigns have started in Catalonia ahead of the December 21st vote, amid ongoing protests for the 4 jailed independence leaders. Let's take a look at the reactions from the political parties on the road to the polls.
Electoral advertising is filling Catalonian streets once again. It's an unusual campaign that begins with jailed candidates and a sacked president in Belgium. It now appears that Carles Puigdemont will not be extradited as the Supreme Court has withdrawn the European arrest warrants. The Independence Front is clear in their message and are still betting on the Catalan Republic, even though they say that with jailed candidates the campaign is at an unfair disadvantage.
While the candidates are in prison, this party won't have a fair fight. This party won't have equal political conditions.
From Brussels, Puigdemont has started his own campaign via video conference. Meanwhile, the coup is talking about a unilateral way to gain independence.
Of course, we will remember October the 1st on Election Day. And even when their media wants us to forget it and be uninformed, we have to remind people that the memory of Catalonians cannot be erased.
The CUP constituent party will collaborate, will participate with a government that's really meant to disobey the Spanish state, to move forward and build a republic.
The Catalunya and Comú Podem party has reaffirmed their rejection to the independence, but also to Article 155. The socialists are presenting themselves as the party of moderation.
We have the key that could unlock the situation, the key that could open new times of solutions.
We don't want to separate, we don't want to break up, we want to contribute and exist in solidarity together.
Citizens and the Popular Party are aspiring with their prospective proposals to end the idea of independence.
Now we will come out to the streets with our orange ballot, the ballot that represents the end of the process and the beginning of a new stage in Catalonia, because we've said enough of this independence process, we've had it.
Because we are those who defend better than anyone a great Catalonia within a great nation, which is ours, which is Spain.
These elections were called by Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy after paralyzing the government of Catalonia, dissolving the Catalan parliament and executing Article 155 as a response of the Declaration of Independence. Many consider that the result of the coming vote will be understood as the second round of Catalan's historic independence referendum.
Now here's a quick roundup of some international stories.
A Saudi-led coalition intensified airstrikes on Yemen as the armed Houthi movement tightened its grip on the capital. Residents of the capital, Sana'a, were forced to leave their destroyed homes, leaving behind many of their belongings because of the continued airstrikes. Russian Olympic athletes were captured visibly upset in Davos on Tuesday after hearing the International Olympic Committee's decision to ban Russia from the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyongyang, South Korea. This follows an investigation into allegations of state sponsorship doping at the 2014 Games hosted by Russia in Sochi. Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman says the ban is part of a larger international campaign to pressure Russia.
I think it's all connected with the fact that the battering ram to isolate Russia, which had been initiated, that this crusade against Russia has fallen apart, failed. No isolation has been achieved, but there is still the intention. There are still powers and means. Why not just apply them in some different areas?
3 Maltese men have been charged for the murder of investigative journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia, who was killed by a car bomb in November. The suspects were also charged with criminal use of explosives, being involved in organized crime, and criminal conspiracy. All men have pleaded not guilty. People for the ethical treatment of animals for PETA protested in New Delhi to urge the government to ban elephant rides among tourists in India. PETA says that the elephants endure physical and psychological abuse.
We want the government to include elephants in the list of non-performing animals, which means the elephants cannot be used for any sort of performance, especially for tourism.
And we continue our series on Kenya, where communities are creating their own models of wildlife conservation to tackle poverty. Let's take a look.
We are in the county of Samburu, on the border with Lake Pia. Moses Lodungokiok is the manager of the community reserve of Lutungai. It is managed by and for the communities that inhabit it.
We will keep this part at rest because of 3 reasons. First, to manage the pastures, as you can see the grass is in better condition in this part. 2, with the goal of conserving our national wildlife. And 3, to focus on the development.
The neighborhood committees work primarily in marking the boundaries of the protected spaces. This is to plan the management of the grass that keeps their cattle alive. The reserve was created in 2004, but the Samburus and Pokots, neighbors of the community, didn't get along until 3 years ago. All of this land was nobody's land, where nothing could be done.
The conflict continued because the problem was that the Pokot felt that they are being chased away from the Samburu County. So we received some resistance from the Pokot, and as a result of that, we fought with the Pokot from the year 2004 through 2012.
The commitment to jointly manage the reserve brought the communities peace. But the challenge is huge due to the pressure of climate change and the policy imposed on neighboring Lake Pia. Some nomad families with their herds still find shelter in the heart of the protected space. Lokdabio Lukwalam, who is a Pokot, says he lost 46 cows on the Muji in Lake Pia during the dry season, where only 6 survived. He and his large family lives off his flock of sheep and goats. They live surrounded by wild animals, and they know that if a goat gets lost, it will be devoured. They are pleased with the conservation project. Although they live without access to schools and health centres, they still don't know how long the project will stay there. The only reason why they've been here for 3 years is because they've found peace. The great challenge of the reserve is to organise as a community, Pokots, Samburus and Ndorobos, hoping that no one will be excluded in the committees and that the development of the reserve creates work, duties and benefits for the people from Lutungai.
Haitian same-sex couples Maxence Denis and Lubens Raphael, with their adopted son, are sharing their personal stories to inspire others in a country where there is no gay marriage or adoption. The gay couple live in Port-au-Prince and spoke openly about their experience with Haitian non-profit HIV support and prevention organization Serovie Foundation.
Human rights organizations defend human rights, but not for gay people. They exist to defend rights for everyone. But when a situation arises involving gay people, they're not there. But they say they're Christian. Come with me.
Certain organizations like Serovie support us when we suffer from acts of violence, as I did. But the national police provides no such protective guarantee. On the contrary, for them, it's all our fault. We have no rights. We have no place to express ourselves. If you come forward as gay, you get thrown out without any help.
We've come to the end of this evening news brief. This and many other news, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.